Kittell. He's spoken to over 5 million people worldwide, and we'll go ahead and roll the introduction video and turn it over to Bob.
You know what's kind of interesting about a goal? I found that it's more of a direction. In fact, I have some goals that I set when I was in high school and college. I want to share them with you. I had a goal to be the halfback on the football team. No. Fullback. No. Wide receiver. No. Distance running. Anybody ever run distance? Yeah, I lasted for 3 minutes. No. Pole vault. Well, I like the pole vault. So I set some goals. I set a goal to get the state record. No. Western New York record. No. Then I set a goal in college to get a scholarship. Well, I missed those field goals. No. Vivian, no. Joni, no. Ruby, no. Karen, no. Kathy, no. 4.0 GPA, no. 3.5 GPA, no. I'm going to stop right there with the GPA. First business, no. Second business, no. Cynthia, no. Kai, no. Lisa, no. Becky, no. Becky, no. Becky, no. I didn't have a lot of luck with Becky. I did this for the Denver Broncos, and one of the players said, "And you're a motivational speaker?" Well, here's what I found out about goals. When you set a goal, it's like heading down a corridor and just having the courage to move in a direction. And if you head down that corridor, you're going to see other corridors of possibilities you would have never known about had you not headed toward that first goal. I had a goal to be the halfback on the football team. It didn't work out. But one day the coach said, "Let's see if you kick a football." I didn't know I could kick 60-yard field goals. That got me into college. So I set a goal to get a scholarship. It didn't work out. But one day I realized I had a bachelor's and a master's degree from a major university. By the way, you guys, when you're second team kicker at a Division I school, you don't get to go to the away games because they only travel with so many people. I was backup, but I figured out a way to go to the away games. There's a squad that goes, the cheer squad. I made the cheer squad. I went to Coach Edwards. I said, "Coach, you'll never believe this." I'm the guy on the bottom. This is why my back is all screwed up to this day. But I went to Coach Edwards and I said, "Hey, Coach, you're never going to believe this, but I made the cheer squad." He goes, "You're right, I don't believe it." I said, "Coach, any chance we could put my equipment underneath the stadium just in case something happens?" Well, he agreed to it. Well, I never really got into kick again, but when I graduated, I thought, I could still kick 60-yard field goals. I should go out for pro football. Now, are there a lot of negative people in the world? Are there people that say, "You can't do it, that can't be done, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard"? Like writing a book. Well, what do you have to say? Well, I found out a negative person can actually influence us. For instance, when I asked this young lady to marry me back in college, she said no. I asked her again and she said no. I asked her again and she said no. I'm not exaggerating. She turned me down over a dozen times before she finally said yes. And then she said no. But I found out what the problem was. When I asked her to marry me, she would go discuss it with her mother. And her mother wasn't very positive. Her mother would say, "Oh, he doesn't really want to marry you. He doesn't really love you. If you marry him, he'll probably move you across the country. I'll never see you again." And you know what? Bob's not very smart. "What do you mean he has a master's degree?" I don't believe it. Have you ever actually seen the diploma? You saw the diploma? I don't believe it. Call the university. You can fake those things, you know. Now, can that influence? And by the way, I actually ended up marrying her. And my mother-in-law ended up, well, a couple of years ago, I decided to get her a cemetery plot for Christmas.
Yeah.
This is your only working mic.
This doesn't work, okay.
So I'll give you
Oh, thank you.
leg room.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Yeah, I can hear me too. This is working out so well. So anyway, oh, by the way, the next year I didn't get her anything for Christmas, and she was really upset. And I said, well, you didn't even use what I got you last year, so I really... But I found you should always go to someone who's positive. I went to my older, wiser mentor. And guys, I mean, that's what you're doing here. There's somebody who knows a lot more than we do, Michael Drew, and it's like, let's learn from what he's already learned. So I went to my older, wiser mentor, and I said, hey, I'm thinking of going out for pro football. What do you think? And he said, Bob, go for it. You can't lose. I said, what do you mean I can't lose? He said, pal, there are two attributes of every successful person. Number one, they were persistent. And number two, they all failed. He said, do you know how many people think failure is a bad thing? It's your failures that teach you how to be successful. He said, go for it. And if you fail, fantastic. You will learn great things that will help you the rest of your life. And if you make pro football and you're famous and you make lots of money, he said, fantastic. You're young, you'll fail later, you should be okay. But he said, you got to be prepared. It's better to be prepared and not get an opportunity than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. So for the next 9 months, I kicked 100 footballs a day. I ran 8 to 10 miles a day, but I had a little problem. I couldn't get into a camp because I didn't have an agent. You got to have an agent to get into pro football, right? Well, when you're really working towards something you want, there are people that will come out of the woodwork, people you don't even know, and they will open up doors for you, like miracles. How many of you have seen that already happen in your life? One day, one of the other football players saw me on campus and says, Bob, the coach for Denver is down in the football office. Go talk to him. Now, did it take a little courage to go down there? Take action. I went down there. I walk into the office. He's surrounded by these all-American football players, and this is almost exactly how it happened. Hey, you guys looking for a kicker? The other players turned around and looked at me like, dude, are you nuts? The coach smiled. Well, we've already signed 5 kickers for camp. Great. What would it take to sign a 5th kicker? And he smiled again. He said, well, he'd have to be pretty darn good. Coach, look out the window. See that field goal post out there? I can kick over the top of that for 50 yards. It'll clear the field goal post. It will clear the fence. It will hit the cars. Then I'll go back and kick off, and I might just put it right through the field goal post. And then I said this. That's pretty darn good, isn't it? You guys, I even didn't believe it. When he looked at his watch, he said, okay, 2 o'clock. I'll give you 15 minutes. He went out. He watched me kick. I nailed everything up to 60 yards. He signed me on the spot. I went to camp, and on the 3rd day of camp, I got cut. Yeah, that's the end of the story. I never got into pro football. I like when I speak at schools, you know what one of the kids said? Dude, why'd you tell us this stupid story? And I said, do you feel like I wasted my life for 9 months? He goes, yeah. I said, that wasn't my experience. You see, at the beginning of the journey, it was like I was in a valley looking at a mountain, and everybody told me, you'll never get into camp. 9 months later, I found myself standing on higher ground, and I learned I can see things I couldn't see before. So that was a story. And now I can tie that into my life. For instance, if you want to be a speaker, I decided my senior year of college I wanted to be a speaker because I heard Zig Ziglar. It resonated from deep inside me. If you want to write a book and it's already resonating, you start moving in that direction. And you watch the doors open. You guys, I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I started memorizing quotes. I have 150 quotes memorized. And I go, how will I keep that in my head? And I found a memory book. And I go, I'm going to learn this memory book. And then because of the memory book, I ended up teaching tens of thousands of college students all over the Things start happening, but you just have to keep moving. Get prepared and move and watch how life happens. This is my daughter, Dolly. Dolly saw her little sister fixing her hair. She goes, Anna, why are you so concerned with how you look? Look at Dad. He doesn't care what people think. Another time I was really sore. Dad, you look sore. Just take drugs. You're at the end of your life anyway. Now, here's another interesting thing. Finding humor. You find humor in your life. Write it down. Are you writing down every time? My kids, I get most of my humor from my kids. I see, my one son, he goes, Dad, you see that guy walking past the car? I go, uh-huh. You see do you think he has a belly? I go, uh-huh. Dad, yours is worse than that. You might think about losing weight. But I think that's pretty funny. Another time I said to this gal, I said, hey, does this shirt make me look fat or is it my stomach? And she said, well, summer is coming. And I thought that was, and I started using it and testing it in front of other people and then tested it in front of audiences. And then you have that in a book. So you start collecting stories. If you don't have your stories collected, start writing them down. If you don't want to write them down, take a tape recorder and just start saying them. And you're going to be surprised how many amazing things have already happened in your life. Okay, so anyway, Dolly, this reminds me of something that's really interesting. This is my signature story. And you may have a signature story in your book. You guys, sometimes your signature story is the lowest point, one of the lowest points in your life. And up to this point, that's what happened. You see, Bob, you're going to die. My doctor told me the little tumor 10 years ago that he took out of my chest had spread from somewhere else in my body. It was called a metastatic adenocarcinoma. I had less than a year to live. Now, he was wrong, but I didn't know that for 28 days. I don't know what you would do if you went through that, but I had already learned gratitude. I picked up my camera and I started filming. It was April. It was snowing. I said, kids, I just found out I've got a year to live, and I want you to know I'm grateful for every day of life I have with you. And then I got practical. I called the dentist and canceled my dentist appointment because I thought, I ain't going there anymore. And then Dolly at the time was 14 years old. She came up to me. She's very practical. She sat me down. She said, Dad, I heard the news. Can I ask you something? I said, sure, what? Dad, do you have life insurance? I said, yeah, why? Any chance we could get some money for some clothes? I mean, not today, but you know. Finding the humor in real life, right? So 28 days later, the doctor calls back the Huntsman Cancer Center and says, Bob, we made a mistake. You're okay? I was grateful. Then I got practical. I called the dentist and got my dentist appointment back. And then I took Dolly shopping for clothes because I didn't want her to be disappointed I didn't die. And real life became a story. And by the way, you know why I think it was worth going through that 28 days? And you're going to find these little gems in your life too. You know why I would go through that entire experience again? Because somebody once said, when you're in a hard place, you might be in the middle of your next inspirational story. There was a little girl in my neighborhood going through chemotherapy for a brain tumor, and she didn't have a hair on her body. When she heard about me in the middle of that 28 days, she showed up at my door with a plate of cookies, and she changed my life. She gave me an insight I'd never seen before. She said this, call me anytime, day or night. I know what you're going through. I think I can help. And I thought if a 13-year-old can do that for an international motivational speaker in his time of need, and I learned we all take our turns, and we all take turns lifting each other. We're all in this together, you guys. I thought, what am I doing with my life? And she inspired me to wake up every day, and I asked this question. This is me in my life. Whose life can I change today? And I spend the day looking for the person. And you know what? Sometimes it's a big audience, a small audience, but guys, more often than not, it's one person in a convenience store, one person on a campus, the person sitting next to me on the airplane. And if you change one life, you didn't change one life. How many did you change? Remember the little girl that I told you at 13 years old? She survived. Last year, she was at UVU when I spoke at that college. She was on the front row. And I said, Jocelyn, you're here. She said, I heard you were speaking. I got to this place in the story, and I said, and this is Jocelyn. Jocelyn, 1 million people's lives have been touched because of the kindness that you brought cookies into my home. And I gave her a hug. You never know the influence that that book you're thinking of writing is going to make. I had a friend in San Diego wanted to write a book, and he didn't know what to write about. I said, write a book to your children, and if the rest of the world catches on, so be it. And if they don't, if you change one life, if one person picked up that book, you have no idea what you set in motion. And if that's what's in your heart, that there's a book in you, get going. And Micah's showing you the way to do that. By the way, this is Dolly at her wedding, my little girl. She had this idea, Dad, when we're dancing the daddy-daughter dance, they have a big screen TV there. Why don't we play this? That was the sweetest moment of the entire wedding, me dancing with her, looking at my sweet little girl. So guess what I do? How many of you like to learn something new and share it with others? Every father I see with a little girl, I tell them this story. And you never know whose lives they're going to touch by moving on. Okay, so we're going to be talking about insights today, and I see none of you are taking notes. I would like to ask you a favor. Please don't take any notes. Every time you look down to take a note, you are going to miss something. This is all recorded. You can watch it again later. And I found that I would stop taking notes when I sit down and I'm taking somebody's telling me something, I turn my recorder on and there's 100% attention because I don't want to miss that insight. Do you know what an insight is? There's a young man who goes to the master. And he says, Master, I wish to learn wisdom. And then the kid starts talking for 2 hours. Finally, the master takes that teacup and he starts pouring tea. Michael Neal tells this story in his book. And it overflows the cup, overflows the saucer, goes onto the floor. And he goes, Master, the cup is full. And the master says, with a twinkle in his eye, Like the cup, your mind is full of your own ideas and accumulated learning. If you want to learn something new, you must empty your cup to make space. When I walk into a room of great men and women, I shut up and I listen and I learn a lot and I wait for the question. And if someone has a question, now they're ready to learn. And by the way, I love this. Consider your mind will not be filled from an expert, a teacher, or a guru, or me. The cup will be filled with wisdom from within. You see, all I'm going to be doing here today, guys, is pointing. Anybody ever take math and you go, I don't get it, I don't get it? I get it. That's what an insight looks like. An insight looks something like this. A dog is chasing his tail. This is in Jamie Smart's book, Clarity. A dog's chasing his tail. He can't catch the tail, so the dog hires a consultant. And the consultant says, what can I do for you? I need some work on speed. It's a very fast tail. I can't catch it. He says, anything else? Yes. Strategy. It's a clever tail. I get close and he keeps getting away. Anything else? Yes. Time management. I'm spending 12 hours a day trying to catch the tail. And so the consultant says, can I give you a little insight, help you to see something maybe you don't see? He says, sure. It's your tail. Oh. That's insight. This is taking notes. Now let me see if I get this straight. It's my tail. Let me write that down. It's my tail. Now what's the process for remembering it's my tail? That's the difference between having an insight and simply going, oh, here's the 5 steps to, okay, so we're going to just be looking for insights. So you guys, one of the things that I love to do when I'm speaking everywhere, whether it's a school, I'm not going to do it here in this audience, but I'm going to show it to you instead. I go, who could use some cheering up? Who's had a tough day, a tough week? Maybe you just need some cheering up, and somebody in my audience will raise their hand. And so I invite them onto stage. I go, don't be nervous. There's just 25,000 people staring at you right now. So she'll come onto stage, and I'll say, hey, Ginger could use some cheering up. Would you like to help me cheer Ginger up? On the count of 3, let's give her a standing ovation. And this is kind of what it looks like.
I got one more thing to cheer you up. Remember that $100 bill? I'm going to give that to you. Is that okay?
Sorry, guys, we're on a budget. We're not doing the $100 here today. But what's interesting is she walks off stage and goes back, and then this is what I say. Ginger's feeling better. But who else is feeling better? What do you think they say? We are. Isn't that amazing? You can't give kindness away. It's always returned. If you're ever feeling down or depressed or lonely, go do something for someone. Now, that's something I learned in 1981, and I share it wherever I go. But that wasn't the purpose for showing you this. It's for another reason. You see, you guys, what you don't know is that guy on that stage, when I was standing there, I was fine. I don't know why. I was fine on stage. But I had something happen to me 7 years ago that when I walked off the stage, I went back into the green room and I curled up into these massive panic attacks. Debilitating panic attacks. I didn't know where they were coming from. People could not believe that I had suffered depression my entire life. But in fight or flight, you have a knot in your stomach. Maybe you can't take in a deep breath. Kids in schools don't even know what this is, so I'm explaining it to it. With depression, it feels like it's getting really dark inside. And you know what? That's great if it's fight or flight to get away from a bear, but there was no bear. And after 4 months of this, you guys, I remember having the insight of going, I know why people end their life. I had no idea. It's not to end their life, it's to end the pain. In fact, 7 years ago, my doctor told me, Bob, you're going to die. He said, for real this time, your body can't handle this massive stress. He goes, I can't believe you're still here. Because I had an arrhythmia from all that stress. When you have cortisol ripping through your body, you feel everything is inflamed. I had to get a massage every day of my entire life because of the tension I carried around inside. I didn't know that. I thought, this is normal. In fact, I said, look, I have spent $40,000 trying to get better. Everyone says they can help me, and nobody's helping me. And this is when I learned a few things. That the world works from the inside out. How many of you understand that nobody can make you mad? Raise your hands if you understand that. I didn't understand that for a long time, and some of you go, well, yeah, someone can make me mad. Somebody cuts me off. Okay, where is the anger? It's inside. That's where we need to look to heal it. How many of you understand that no one can hurt you? Raise your hand. Raise them high, because, and just be proud. Raise your high, because I didn't learn that till 2 years ago when I went, I can't take the chance of her hurting me. And I went, oh my gosh, the hurt's inside. I found out that it's an inside-out world. Who's ever had a teddy bear or a blanket? Okay, imagine that teddy bear is sitting right here in front. What magical properties are coming out of the teddy bear to make you feel good? None. Does everybody agree with that? There's really nothing coming out of the bear. So where is the beautiful feeling, you guys? It's inside. It's always there. What magical teddy bears right now are people chasing because they think something out there is going to make them feel good in here? Alcohol. What else? Drugs. A new car. What else? The next business venture. What? TV. Girlfriend. Boyfriend. Okay, so they're all. Do we know people that got all of that and they still go, something's missing, and they're never happy? And they're the adrenaline junkies, or I got to get something, because they're trying to fill the hole inside. Or it's shopping. It could be all kinds of things, all kinds of addictions. By the way, a compulsive addiction. This one cracked me up. You know what a compulsive addiction is? You got to do something to be of worth. If I didn't get something done that day, I thought I sucked. I could do better. And I found out that was an addiction. Well, with that in mind, these are the words that people described my friends over my entire life up until about 3 years ago. They said, Dad, or my friends would say, I was intense, go, 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 I can't sit still. I had a plan B, C, D, and E. My greatest fear was boredom. I was active from morning to night. I had to exhaust myself to get to bed at night. One of my friends said, Bob, you were kind of crazy. I knew you had a great heart, but you were kind of crazy.
People still say that.
I know, yeah, thank you. You know, it's really funny. We went to lunch, and Bob, you really are calm when you're talking to you one-on-one. When you said your son said you were like a mosquito on cocaine, nothing changed. You're still like a mosquito on cocaine. But this is my performance voice. I know how to keep people's attention, so that's what I try to do. Okay, so this is what was going on inside. I've kept a journal every day of my life since I was a freshman in college. After the panic was gone, these are some of the words that I talked about. And before the panic attacks were gone, these were even worse. And if I'm pushing somebody into this place, I apologize. I'm going to try to get lighter now, because I've actually put people right into this yuck place. But I want to talk about these hidden memories. He sent me to a guy named Dr. Manoff. He says, Bob, we just need to help you inside. And so Dr. Manoff got me connected with what are called repressed energy or repressed memories, things I couldn't handle when I was a child. And I didn't really understand what he was talking about. But hidden memories may protect us from emotional pain of recalling an event, but eventually those memories can cause debilitating psychological problems such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, or dissociative disorders. All right, so I also found this out. I was talking to an official over at the healthcare, Intermountain Healthcare. He said, Bob, 37% of the patients that check into the hospital, there's nothing wrong with them physically. It's something up here that's driving them there. There was a guy from Fox Sports. He told me that he went into the doctor because he had all kinds of intestinal problems and headaches. The doctor, after $3,000 worth of tests, said, pal, there's nothing wrong with you. It's coming from up here. He said, get rid of your smartphone. He goes, I can't get rid of my smartphone. He goes, pal, it's overloading your brain. If you're not going to get rid of it, don't complain anymore. And we'll talk more about that later. So he finally called his staff in. He got off all the electronics, and he started feeling better. But it was coming from up here, and he realized that. Well, with Dr. Manoff, and he's out of American Fork, let me just go to this. Suppress. Some people wake up and try to control everything and everyone around them so they can feel okay. This is where manipulation comes from. I'm going to get you to do what I want so I can feel better about me, and they become the controlling person. Some of us have seen that in themselves. I saw I was this 100%. I didn't get it, but that's what I had going. And getting those bad memories out, you didn't like it when it happened, you won't like it when it's released. Michael Singer, Untethered Soul. So here's kind of how it works. I loved, let me go right here, baby birds. When I was 11 years old, I was raising baby birds. As an adult, every single year, I found baby birds to raise. So here I am as an 11-year-old feeding a baby robin. When I was a senior in high school, you guys, I found a baby robin. I would steal them out of their nest so I could put them in my pocket and feed them every 20 minutes. I had this obsession. I didn't know what obsession was. 7 years ago, when I was in crisis, I had 25 baby birds in my backyard, and I was paying somebody $50 to $100 a day to take care of them. Obsessive? I didn't know what that was. One of the suppressed memories he helped me find was I was 5 years old, and I found a baby robin. I'm 5 years old. I'm teaching it how to fly. This is how you fly, and I throw it up, and it'd fall down, and it'd throw up and fall down, and I moved it, and I remember the rage welling up inside me, and I took the bird, and I threw it at the ground, and I killed it. And he said, Bob, the 5-year-old couldn't handle what you just did. The shame, the guilt, the fear, whatever, the rage, you buried it. When I found the memory as a 54-year-old, I sobbed uncontrollably, cathartically for 4 hours without stopping. I thought I was going to die. It wouldn't stop. It finally went away, and it was like this memory came into my mind, the baby bird saying, pal, you're 5 years old. You're forgiven. Don't worry. I'm okay. That was kind of how that process went. And then my daughter said something to me last year. Dad, have you noticed that you haven't raised a baby bird for the last 6 years? Something got healed inside. In fact, today, this is so funny because today it happened again. Somebody called me, Bob, I know you know a lot about birds. We have this bird, it fell out of its nest. And I go, then just put it back up in a tree, it'll be fine. It used to be I would drive 90 miles up to Ogden, pick it up, come back, and I would make sure that baby bird made it into life. That's one of 4 months of rage I found every single day. And it was horrifying for me. I buried everything since I was 3 years old. In fact, the memory he found when I was a 3-year-old, all it was this. My mother left me at somebody's house. I felt abandoned because she was going to the hospital to get her gallbladder out. I felt abandoned. I felt rage and hatred and shame toward my mom. The adult, I loved my mom. The 3-year-old, I found out, hated her. And I had to actually go through the experience of hating her, and it's a horror. I don't even want to go into what I saw, because he taught me, Bob, quit judging what you're seeing, quit judging what you're feeling. He goes, anger is a secondary emotion covering pain. So I would feel the rage, and I'll just give you an idea. I would punch a pillow. He got me moving and feeling it every single time. And then there was the sobbing that came after that, because he said, there's the grief, the sorrow. And then it was like my mother forgave me, or that process happened. Now let me show you a couple other ones. Rage. Golf or basketball. I missed a shot in basketball. I suck! I'd break the clubs. I usually never took it out on people, but boy, did I take it out on the equipment. Well, when I was going through this yuck 7 years ago, and it was really raw, this guy hip-checked me on purpose, and I attacked him, and I'd never attacked anyone. And half of my mind went, well, he's twice as big as me. They'll probably pull me off of him before he kills me. But I knew where it was coming from. It wasn't him. It had nothing to do with the person in front of me. Anytime you have an emotional response that is out of proportion with the event, I think it's called the book, The Brain Can Change Itself. It comes from a childhood suppressed memory. So I went home, I beat the heck out of him in my mind until he was a pulp. And then I looked into his eyes, and it reminded me of a coach in college. Then it reminded me of a coach in high school who wrote, I'm a loser on everybody's helmet. I had no idea I had that much rage in him. And then it went all the way back to me being a little boy, and I was mad at God about something, and I cursed, and I was mad, and then that finally was healed, and something funny happened. The competition in sports, it's gone. I have a lovely time out on the golf course, and I calm everyone down, and people said, we hated playing golf with you. You were a mess. It was no fun to play golf with you, because you've played with people like that, right? Now I go, oh, they've got rage inside. That seems to be what happened with me. Then there's the sadness. After the rage was handled, then I had to deal with sadness and shame. And I have McDonald there because I found back when I was in college, if I broke up with someone, she'll get over it. You guys, I had no idea how much sadness I had pushed down inside. I sobbed and sobbed over every person I'd ever hurt in my entire life. That took another 4 months. And then there's shame. I tell the kids in school, I go, you know what? When I was in high school, or not high school, middle school, a kid picked me up and he put his fist back ready to hit me. It wasn't that kid that was that buried emotion that had to come out. It was the 7 people over there that were watching, laughing about this. And the shame of those 7 people laughing at me was buried as sadness and shame so deep that it hurt really bad that had to come out. That wasn't the worst one. Then there's guilt. I didn't intervene. I'm a senior in high school, and I saw something happen, and I could have stopped it. And I walked past it. I sobbed probably every day for 4 hours a day because that was one of the deepest, most horrifying things I had ever done. I even called her and said, I am so sorry I didn't intervene. She didn't even remember what happened. But my gosh, you guys, that stuff, I had no idea how powerful it was. Well, when I got rid of all that stuff after 8 months, I went into Dr. Manoff and I said, something really funny's going on. He goes, what? I don't have to play golf all day. In fact, I was sitting on the airplane looking out the window at the clouds. What's going on? He goes, pal, your OCD is gone. I go, what? That can fall away? He goes, yeah, the brain can heal itself. But I still had this massive anxiety every day that wouldn't go away. And I thought, well, at least it's not panic. At least I don't have a pit in my stomach. So I call it my residual yuck. And you guys, I'm a motivational speaker. I am going to figure this thing out. So the first thing I did, can I have the first book? I learned all about positivity. Dr. Paul Jenkins wrote this book, Portable Positivity and Pathological Positivity, and I became an expert in positivity. I sold more books for him than he sold himself. And basically it's this. No matter what's going on in your life, he said, Bob, you have what's called a negative bias. You're always going, it would be better if. You spoke to 30,000 people, it would be better if they had pizza in the green room. It would be better if you got upgraded to first class. You're always finding something that would be better if, and it's kind of cool because you're always looking to make things better, but it creates a negative emotion. He said, Bob, your life rocks. I go, what do you mean? Bob, it could be worse. He said, every time you catch yourself going, it could be better, I want you to catch yourself and go, it could be worse. And I practiced this over 6 months, and I got really, really good at it. In fact, a little while later, about 9 months later, I was in a car accident down in Mexico. My friend's driving, he loses control, we go off an embankment, and we roll twice. And he says, are you okay? I said, no, I think I have a broken neck, because I couldn't even move my head with all this pain shooting across. I go, I think I have a broken neck. So they got me out of the car, they laid me on the ground, I've got a neck brace on, I'm waiting for the ambulance, and listen to the first few words I say. Here we go.
My phone is bent a little bit.
So then I get to the hospital, and the x-ray machine didn't work, and nobody speaks English. So they put me on a gurney and rolled me across the street to the other hospital. Why go around the curb when you can go over it, right? So then one of the guys notices that the sun is in my eyes, and he puts a blanket over my head. I go, don't do that, they'll think I'm dead. But I'm laughing harder than anyone, and they think I'm nuts. There you go. And right here, if you can see, I'm pointing up and I'm laughing uncontrollably because there's 2 vultures circling right over my head. Go, guys, look, this can't be good. They must know. But did that look like somebody who had a negative bias? I saw that day that he was right. I changed my brain. I rewired it. I went from a negative to a positive bias, and I was selling books for him all over. And then one day I went, I am the most positive, anxious person on the planet. The anxiety was still there. All those things that were written there were still happening. The chest, So then I learned about gratitude. Oh, can I have that book? Flip the Gratitude Switch. Awesome book about how to take ingratitude and make it grateful. And I became an expert. And by the way, you guys, there's a guy he's the Warren Buffett of Japan. My friend interviewed him, and he said, what's the secret to your success? He goes, I'm grateful 1,000 times a day. He goes, what? He goes, yeah, I'm grateful 1,000 times a day, and when I buy up enough of a company, I go to management and I get them to buy in to being grateful 1,000 times a day, because he said Japan is the saddest industrialized nation in the world. I mean, they had nothing, and they're coming back. Their suicide rate is off the charts. But he said, by getting them to get positive, he said, every single business just flourished. I just had to change their mindset. And he said, if they wouldn't buy into it, I sold off all my stock and got rid of the company. Well, I found out there's an easier way, because I started doing that 1,000 times a day. It was on my checklist. I found out there's a guy in UC Davis, Emmons, I believe is his name. He did a study at UCLA or USC. Write down one thing you're grateful for and 5 reasons why. Go deep instead of sideways, and it's more powerful, and those students were actually doing better. And I got really good at gratitude, and I taught gratitude, and I was the most positive, grateful, anxious person every single day. And then I learned about happiness, the happiness advantage. Anybody listen to Simon Sinek? I thrived on that. I found out about power poses, and I put that on my checklist. And I found out, here's a great book. I know this guy. He's at University of Texas. If you're so smart, why aren't you happy? There's all kinds of research done that if you will do all these things, you will be happier. And it takes a lot of work, but for 4 hours every morning, I would go through my checklist, and I was the most positive, grateful, happy, anxious person every single day. And then in the book, he even talks about random acts of kindness. Did anybody ever see the documentary Happiness? Random acts of kindness, people feel better. They do. And I became the most positive, grateful, happy, service-oriented, meditative, affirmative, all kinds of other stuff, anxious person every single day. And I'm going, my gosh, I might just have to live with this the rest of my life and just be grateful for it. In fact, I want to show you what I learned. I call them Band-Aids. Positivity was a Band-Aid. Why? It didn't last. I had to do something the next day. Meditation was a Band-Aid. It worked for a while, but then it came back. Random acts of kindness. My test for finding out if it's a Band-Aid, and I think Band-Aids are great, and life gets better, and we can turn the yuck off for a while, but it's not lasting. Everybody was showing me how to swing at the leaves. And then I met a guy named James Hadlock. He's not here tonight. He lives in Midway. And I sat down with James Hadlock. You know why? Because he called me, and I was still in a cloud. When you have all that anxiety, there's no blood in your frontal lobe, and you feel like you're in a cloud. So he calls me, and I just showed up. I showed up for whoever called, because I've learned to always step through the open door. And he's there with his wife, and they're this calm couple, and I almost like Mother Teresa and Christ. I mean, I was just going, what is going on with these two? He goes, Bob, let me tell you what happens. First of all, I'm a convicted felon. I've been overdosed over 60 times in my life. My parents thought that he was showing me how to show up as your authentic self. I didn't know this yet. He goes, one of my greatest moments is I have live footage that I've taped of 5 police cars in Salt Lake chasing me because I was high and crashed into a telephone pole. I'm a convicted, and he's telling me all this, and I'm sitting there looking at him going, huh? And then he goes, there's nothing you can tell me that will make me think less of you. And I thought, well, yeah, after you told me all that, I feel pretty safe telling you anything because I can't match your story. And then he said this to me, Bob, when something's inside going on, a disturbance inside, we try to stay really busy so we don't have to face it. Bob, busy is an addiction. Go look it up. He goes, people look at someone drinking or on drugs and go, oh. He goes, they're doing that to cover the pain. He goes, you have been using busy to cover the pain. Let me guess, you always say, I'll go nuts if I don't stay busy. I go, uh-huh. He goes, then I'll tell you what you tried to do to feel better inside. You go, I'll reframe it. I go, what do you mean reframe? Oh, you caught the negative and turned it into a positive. You caught the ungrateful and turned it. He goes, that's great. Life got better, right? It didn't help, did it? And it takes a lot of work. He said, then I'll tell you what you did. You thought, if I serve enough people, I'll get better. Bob, if you're serving other people to feel wonderful, you're going to burn out if you already haven't. Michael Neal talks about this. He goes, if you're running away from the pain by serving others, it's a Band-Aid. After you're done serving, you come back home and you feel yucky again, don't you? Uh-huh. He said, if you want to serve others because you got inspired to do it, that's a beautiful thing. So this is exactly what I did. All right, well, what do you got? Just like that. And he just sat back and just looked at me. I'm going to teach you how to get connected with yourself and others, and everything will get better. Great! How do you do that? And I pulled out my checklist. Let me show you what my checklist looks like. I pray, and then I read my scriptures, and I've got my gratitude journal, and I do my tapping, and I do my power poses, and I do my look for the good in other people. And then I got halfway done. He goes, Bob, I'll finish it for you since you're enjoying this. My compassion meditation, and what did I learn today in my funny time, and I watch comedy, and then who am I going to inspire, and then whose life did I change today, and play therapy, and tell someone thank you. And Bob, could you do me a favor? What? Will you close the book and throw that book away and never look at it again? You know how long it took me to put this together? Bob, how's that working for you? And I was at a point that if he would have told me, put 5 stones in your right pocket and move them over to your left pocket, these are magic stones, I would have done anything. That's what you do when you're drowning in the ocean. So I closed the book and I threw it in a garbage can. I go, what? And now I have tears in my eyes. What am I going to do? He said, Bob, you've gone to a lot of counselors and therapists and you've spent $40,000. You already told me. He goes, and when you leave the office, you feel better, right? I go, uh-huh. And then the next day you feel lousy, right? I go, uh-huh. He said, I could put you in my trunk right now where you can't see, and I could drive you up to Park City. Open it, you get out and go, wow, it's beautiful, but tomorrow morning you're going to wake up and have no idea how to get to Park City. I'm going to teach you how to get to Park City all by yourself. And then I began my journey with James Hadlock. And I'm going to share some of that part with you because he started with, can I have a snow globe? He started basically with this principle because I said, I don't know what to do about my ex-wife. I don't know what to do about speaking. I don't know what to do with my career. And he says, Bob, he goes, imagine this is all the thoughts racing around in your head. Can you see clearly right now? I go, no. He said, if you wait till it settles, can you see clearly? I go, uh-huh. He said, put all of those problems on the shelf. When your mind clears, you'll know exactly what to do. All the answers are already in you. But your mind is making too much noise. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. But he says, Bob, what happens after every storm? I go, it gets calm again. He said, what did you have to do to get that snow globe to calm down? I go, well, nothing. He goes, you didn't have to go, positive thought? You didn't have to go, I gotta go serve someone? He goes, do nothing, sit in the silence, and Einstein says this. At least I heard he said this. 99 times I think and nothing comes. I stop thinking, I swim in the silence, and truth comes to me. And guys, I'm going to give you a preview at the end of what's going on today. That's what I found out life happens. I spoke at a BYU, and I told the kids, if you're praying, shut up. Sit with the question, and then watch the answer come in the silence. And if there's too much clutter going on here, this is what we need to work on. We need to go inside. So one of the first things he taught me, what's called the power of pause. Okay, has anybody ever noticed that when you or someone else is driving down the freeway and you get cut off, you go, ah! Okay, is it familiar to anyone? Or you miss a putt, ah! Okay, got that? Well, he said, Bob, what if we could pause each time and sit in the silence? So there's a dog out in the fields, and you go to pet the dog, and the dog snarls and tries to bite you. Is there an instant reaction, you guys? Be honest, right? Okay, judgment, I don't want anything to do with this dog. All right, another guy walks out into the field. He sees the dog, he goes to pet him, the dog lashes out. But this guy, watch this, pauses and gets really curious and really interested. And in the quiet goes, oh, I can see something I couldn't see before. The dog's paw is caught in a trap. He's in pain. No wonder he's lashing out. When somebody lashes out at you in your life and in your world, aren't they really just telling you they're in pain? And my life changed right there. And I learned that when someone's in pain, all the blood has left your frontal lobe. You're literally insane in the moment. Have you ever said or done things when you were angry that you would have never done if you were not angry? I remember once hanging up the phone. I was so angry, I took the cell phone and threw it at the wall. And as it was heading toward the wall, the blood came back, and I went, why did I do that? I mean, you've seen it. I was working with a guy up in Canada after a Tony Robbins event because I was talking about the rage inside. And he said, Bob, I joined the military because I want to kill people. I have that rage inside. He said, my problem is I'm back, and I have a son, and I've got a wife, and I'm scared to death because the rage is still there. And when I get angry, I want to kill someone. I'm afraid for them. And he had tears in his eyes, and he was being very vulnerable. And he looked at me like, what should I do? And I explained, there's no blood up here right now. You're insane in the moment. I said, one, will you please promise me you will go get someone to help you because you can be healed? I know that. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't help you with that. But would you go to one? He promised. And then I said, if this happens when you're in the house with your wife or your son, it's not them that's triggering it. Notice that you're insane. Get out and get into the woods. Take it out on a tree. Wait till you calm down before you go back. And that's how I'm starting to do things. Well, I realized if this was going on up here, I got to wait till I'm calm. I've had people that have been angry screaming at me, and instead of screaming back, which just escalates it, I just get really interested, and I listen. I validate them. I show them that I honor them, that something's going on. And then when they're done, I might go, is there more? Yeah, there's more. And then after that, they go like this, you guys. whether it's your kids, your spouse, yourself, and a lot of times when they go, now the blood's back, now you can have the discussion. Try not to jump in before that happens. So, let me show you how this worked. I jumped into a cab 2 years ago with a very good friend of mine. He's known me for 15 years. We get into the cab. I tell the cab driver where we're going. He hits the gas like we're in the Daytona 500. So I lean forward and I said, sir, I was in a rollover last year. Could you go a little slower? He slams on the brakes. He smacks his hands on the steering wheel and he goes, pal, it's been a year. You should be over it. Does anybody feel a visceral reaction? My friend is like this, and I'm sitting there like this. And I immediately saw someone in pain. And by the way, you guys, I'm in a place where I love the guy, and I don't know why I love people now, but I just love the guy going, he's in pain. And then I sat with it, and I watched for something to bubble up, and here's what bubbled up. You're probably right. My nerves are kind of shot because the rollover was just last year. Could you go a little slower, please? And then he went, oh, okay. And then he became my best friend all the way to the hotel, telling us everything we needed to see before we left Alaska. We got out of the car, we walked inside. You know what my friend said to me? Dude, what's with you? I go, what? 2 years ago, you would have ripped his head off and gone straight to DEFCON 5. What's wrong with you? Well, things started changing inside. The more and more I got connected to others, James Hadlock was right. As I was getting healed by connecting with others, I was starting to get better inside. So, with connection, show up as your authentic self every single time. You guys are networking. You're networkers. You're meeting other people. Show up as your authentic self. If any of you have talked to me for any length of time, you already know that, oh yeah, I had these massive panic attacks 7 years ago. When I would date somebody brand new, I used to try to put on my best self, and you know what I do now? Yeah, I had these massive panic attacks 7 years ago. I'm doing a lot better now, and I just show up as my authentic self, and almost always this is what happens. Thank heaven somebody's finally real, and then they open up and tell me about their life. And we have a beautiful conversation, whether it's female, male, with my kids. I remember sitting around a table with them, and one of them said, Dad, how are you doing today? And I go, I don't know, you guys. Something's going on inside today. They all put their cell phones down and looked at me. What's up, Dad? Instead of, yep, everything's cool, having a blast, things are great, because that's what I did my whole life. So I want to point this out now. Judgment is a connection killer, one of the greatest epiphanies of my life also. My son's 30 years old. I said, hey, let's go to a movie. He goes, Dad, I can't go to a movie with you. I said, how come? Dad, when I was a little boy, there was something inappropriate on TV. You walked in and said, we don't watch stuff like that in this house. He said, Dad, do you know to this day when you walk in the house, if the TV's on, my whole body tightens up. I look over my shoulder. I am scared to death you're in there watching me watch the TV. I said, Tom, how come you never told me this before? Dad, the way you used to judge Uncle Mike for playing golf on Sundays and not being spiritual enough, I didn't feel safe with you. And in that moment, I realized even as a speaker, if I judge you, I just shut you all down. No one will walk up to me and tell me a thing. You'll protect yourselves. You'll go, he's not safe to be with. I was sitting around a table with all four of my older children about 3 years ago, and something happened and they all tensed up. And I go, guys, what was that? Dad, we just don't want to disappoint you. Disappointment is a judgment, like I know better than you do. I wrote them all a letter that night, and I said, there's nothing you can do or not do that will ever disappoint me. I love you. You don't have to earn my love. You're my kids. I don't care if you're in prison. I'm there for you. And the relationship with two of my kids changed immediately. The third one came around a little while later, and the last one finally came around, and I said, what changed? Dad, I finally believe you. I finally believe you've changed. She said, Dad, we've got a little joke in Utah Valley. The stricter the parent, the better liars we become. And I found out we've got to do it this way. All I was doing was driving my kids away. So we can go deeper into that another day, but I want to give you one more example. There was a young lady I know that we've been talking for about 4 years, and her son, he was rejected from the Army because of depression. He wouldn't leave the house. He wouldn't get a job. He just sat around all day. She goes, will you talk to him? And I'm going, okay. So I go over there. I walk in the door. What would a 22-year-old do? Here's the fourth big guy, old guy, comes in. The wall goes right up, right? I showed up as my authentic self. I understand you've had some depression. Let me tell you what it looks like. I said, I was there. And it's really dark. And I explained how I went through it and the suffering I went through. The wall came right down. We talked for 2 hours. At the end of 2 hours, and basically he did most of the talking, I just sat there and listened. He goes, "You're not like other adults I know." I go, "Why?" He said, "You don't judge." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "I tested you twice. 5 minutes after you walked in the door, I told you I went drinking with my friends. It's an LDS culture." He said, "If you had gone, we were done. At an hour, I tested you again." I said, "How?" "I told you about the drugs that I do with my friends." Again, it was like I told you I went to the movie. He said, "I just felt compassion from you, acceptance from you." And 2 weeks later, his mother calls me. She goes, "What did you do with my son?" I go, "What?" She said, "That was the greatest discussion he's ever had with an adult. He got a job. He moved out. He's working. What did you say?" I said, "I didn't say anything, except I knew he had all his own answers. By me sitting there with no judgment, I gave him a chance to figure it out on his own. With no judgment was the key." I started doing that with my kids. You guys, my kids love me, and I've done a lot of stuff with my kids. I only spoke 4 days a month, and the rest of the time it was boating, it was the wind tunnel. I did everything with my kids, and I'm going, how come my kids don't like hanging around me some more? My daughter, my youngest, said, "Well, Dad, when we went bowling, we had to bowl a certain way, and you had to teach us, and it was no fun. Now we go with you, and you just go, have fun. I don't have to show you or teach you or make you do anything. You're just there for us." And life changed and got even better. Distractions. I want to talk about distractions and how they're a connection killer. Smartphone addiction causes an imbalance in the brain that makes people tired and anxious, study finds. Smartphone addiction could be changing your brain. Here's 4 different, all kinds of articles that have come out in the last couple of years. This one's really interesting. Gray matter, too much screen time damages the brain. Actually, they have now found all screen time damages the brain. If you have children, they should never look at a bright screen because the light shrinks the frontal part of the brain, and we have a whole society of ADHD out there. The kids at BYU, and there's a documentary on Adderall, is exploding. They say, "Well, I can't concentrate unless I have the Adderall." And so they give it to each other, helping each other out. My kids, I said, "Is it true you can get Adderall anyway?" "Oh, Dad, we can get anything anywhere." And they're getting more and more addicted. It's kind of interesting, right? Well, listen to this one. Almost everyone, this was on CBS, almost everyone in our country is addicted to electronics and riddled with denial. When I talk to people about it, they get defensive. They say it's not an addiction, it's just something they enjoy. I love to play ping pong, I love to practice the drums, I love to tap dance. But I've never even once tried to figure out how to do any of these while driving in such a way that the cops couldn't see. Because I'm not addicted to those activities, I just enjoy them, and there's a huge difference. Screen devices wreak havoc with the brain's frontal lobe. Diagnosis of ADHD in our children has taken a steep rise since the proliferation of screen devices. Yet, even when presented with that information, parents often won't hear of protecting their kids from the harmful effects of screen devices. Kids love them, they say. Well, yes, they do. And kids would love heroin if we gave it to them. I'm told that after the initial vomiting stage, it can be quite a hoot. We didn't know this when we first brought these shiny new toys into homes, but now we do. Still, adults aren't doing anything about it. Why? Because we're addicted. Addiction hampers judgment. I will show you this, and there are those of you that nothing will change, because you'll go, well, that's just some of the studies. What about the other studies? I know this because I'm in the same place. Part of confirmation bias is we don't want to be wrong, and we will just see what we want to see. The solution is all of my electronics are in black and white. Even my screens on my computers, and if I watch TV at home, I do one of 2 things. I bought these. They're at Best Buy. It blocks out the blue light that's coming off of that. That's all I got to do. Put this on if I'm going to look at it. But they've already told you that if you have blue light before you go to bed, you're not getting deep sleep. Deep sleep is the part that doesn't let your brain clean out. We've got more people with memory problems, younger and younger and younger. That's all I'm going to say about that part, you guys. I'm going to let you go look at that. I could talk 2 hours on this because I'm now teaching schools and people across the country about what's going on with this. Over in Asia, South Korea and China have addiction recovery centers for electronics. France has outlawed smartphones in the schools starting next year. The MTC has dummy smartphones they give the kids because they're so nervous unless they put this in their hand. The commanding admiral for Hawaii told me personally, we have changed boot camp because these kids come as a mess because we had to pull these away from them. You can't take these to boot camp. So this is interesting. 3 years ago, I'm at a junior high school, and one of the kids at the junior high school, he says, "You're nobody." I go, "What?" "You're nobody. You're not on Instagram. You're nobody. I've spoken to 5 million people." And he didn't believe me. "Yeah, right. You're nobody." So I started going around the country when I speak, and I go, "Hey, could you guys follow me on Instagram?" Because I didn't know about what's going on with all of the social media. And before I show you this, 3 years ago, I didn't know this. But the people who developed the scroll down feature, you know the scroll down? Who's ever done the scroll down on Facebook? Okay, who's ever done the, well, you know the Facebook like, right? It's called variable rewards. This is why people get addicted to gambling or golf, because every once in a while you get a win, and for whatever reason, our brain, we get addicted to that. We crave it. We can't wait to get back to it. Kitty, look at the kitty. Hey, here's a cool one. Watch. That's variable rewards. They did it on purpose. So last year, before I knew a lot about this, I said to the kid on the front row, "Hey, check out Bob Memory on Instagram. I got 10,000 followers." "Oh, this is really good." "Well, what if I had 3 followers?" "Well, that would be really bad." "Oh, well, not bad. It just means you don't know anybody." I said, "So you think I know 10,000 people?" "Well, yeah." And she got a little bit stuck. And I said, "You guys have somehow been hoodwinked into thinking your personal worth is how many likes you have. And some of you already feel that. You post something and not enough people like you, they've got algorithms to know what people are looking at with you. They've got algorithms to know when a kid is depressed. They'll send him a like just to boost him so he's back to his smartphone, because that's where the advertising is. Anyway, this is really counter, but follow me on Bob Memory, because it does nothing but help me get into the schools. I do 1 minute with Bob's, but I don't want you to get addicted to it. In fact, I almost wonder if I even don't want people to follow me anymore. But I do 1 minute with Bob's, and they're inspirational, and they look something like this.
I walked in and said, "I've got this headache, and my shoulders are always so tight, and I do massages." And a friend of mine says, "Well, can I point something out?" "Oh, you're always trying to get me advice. You're always trying to fix things." Well, one day I finally had enough, and I said, "Okay, what do you got?" He says, "Bob, I'm just going to point something out. Look in the mirror." And I looked in the mirror, and I went, "Oh, no wonder." And I went like this. And then my friend said, "So what are those things you're carrying?" I go, "This is a past relationship, and this is a missed opportunity." He goes, "How's that been working for you, carrying those?" "Oh, 1 minute with Bob."
So now I want to talk about listening. Because if you really want to connect with people, I'm going to show you one of the most powerful ways you can start doing it right now today with every person in your family. You will become a better father, a better wife, a better husband, a better, all of that stuff, okay? A friend. I got mixed up. I teach memory. Okay. Consider somebody's talking to you. Has anybody ever, I don't need these. Have you ever noticed that when somebody's talking to you, you're already thinking about what you're going to say next? Whoever does that? Connection's been broken. It's already broken. There's no connection, and you know that. If you see this guy waiting for you to shut up so he can tell you what he's going to say next, the connection's broken. I wrote these all down. I love these. Do you ever notice that you jump in or jump on top of somebody else? You're saying something I don't agree with, so no. You've seen that, right? Or we keep interrupting each other. You're both not listening. You're both trying to one-up each other or correct the other person. You're holding thoughts in your head. There's no connection. Try this, you guys. Do you ever see a bunch of people with big egos all one-upping each other? You think your story is great. Well, let me tell you my story. Or how about this? Just get together with a bunch of people and go, "My elbow hurts." Watch that one take off. You with me? How about this? What if you were to just sit, not to reply, but sit for insight? What if you could sit there without worrying about what the other person is thinking? Because it takes a lot of energy to think for two people. And by the way, it's none of your business what they're thinking. Just be your authentic self and quit worrying what they're thinking. Here's another one. Some of you are doing this already. How does this fit into my cognitive structure of what I've already decided is? I was talking to 2 bishops up on campus about this stuff. Well, how does this fit into the gospel? I said, I can answer this question for you. I have no clue, and I'm okay with that. And they both went, "Oh, okay." And then we moved on. But try to stop fitting everything into the map you've put together of the world. Okay, so one other thing we do. We have all of these immediate connections in our brain. I'll show you one. And like a good neighbor, come on, guys, and like a good neighbor. Okay, perfect. Boom, boom, right? If I said Hawaii, you probably all have a Hawaii or something that reminds you of Hawaii or a vacation story. If I probably say girlfriend, boyfriend, you probably, what if we could just sit quietly and pause? So I want everyone to take in a deep breath and hold it. And when I ask you to exhale, I want you to relax just 5%. I'm going to say, and like a good neighbor, and I want you to just sit with it. And I want you to see what might bubble up, like a bubble coming up out of, or a movie screen. See what bubbles up. And like a good neighbor, what we're starting to look at here right now is insight. Where do we find our answers? Does somebody have something more insightful or more? Yes.
Like a good neighbor, Stu has no hair.
Well, that is a new well, that's an old insight. Okay. Uh-huh.
Like a good neighbor, I let him borrow my eggs.
Okay. So something deeper, more profound can come up if we give it time, as long as we don't break it off. So I'm going to show you what James showed me about deep listening. I have a volunteer, Krista, and I want to show you that. I want you to see it and have an experience with it. Come on up. And we get to both sit right in front of this. Come up close. Okay, yes, right there. Okay. Now, in this exercise, what I used to do, you guys, when he showed me how to do this, he says, Bob, let people know why you're looking them in the eye. And if any of you have talked to me, you go, geez, he's just looking at me in the eye the whole time. So I would say, I'm working on anxiety inside, and my coach told me this would help. If it's okay, I'll be looking in your eye. Look wherever you want, but I'll be here. And if you get nervous or it's uncomfortable, will you please tell me? And no one has ever told me to stop looking, and usually this happens after an hour and a half. Dude, I just told you things I've never told anyone else before. And it was after doing this, okay? I hope I'm close enough. Am I close enough to this up there, you guys?
Yes.
Okay. All right, in this exercise, and I don't know why, it's left eye to left eye. James actually started with just looking into the other person's eyes, and that seemed to do it, but left eye seemed to be, it actually feels more intense for some people, okay? So I'm going to ask a question. You're going to sit very still. And for this exercise, you don't have to do this for everybody in the rest of your life. I ask a question, and you're going to sit and see what bubbles up, and I'm going to listen with nothing on my mind, and then we'll take turns, right? Okay. Do you want an easy question or a hard question?
Easy, please.
Oh, okay. Tell me about one of your favorite birthdays.
I had a Barbie cake, so I remember being on the porch and having layers of this cake with the Barbie head. It was made out like a dress, and getting to cut into that dress and holding
okay.
still. And I think it was probably only 9, but I was really proud of the cake. It's probably all I remember about the birthday.
Now, the other thing that's happening is I'm waiting 3 seconds because she might have more to say instead of cutting her off mid-thought. Okay, now, ask me a question more about me. It can be a hard question if you'd like, and listen with nothing on your mind.
What are your greatest hopes for your kids?
I would say my greatest hopes for my kids is they could learn what I've learned, that they could walk with inner peace and not be all wound up inside like I was my whole life. And I'm actually surprised at how far they came along. My youngest daughter walked in and said, Dad, you know what I learned? It's not my job to make everyone happy. And I said, sweetie, it took me to my 50s to learn that. And my other daughter, she's calling and telling me things that she learned. And I said, Dolly, do you remember we talked about that 3 years ago and you completely disagreed? She goes, I know, Dad, I had to see it for myself. Okay, this feels different than a normal conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys, if you're experiencing this, sometimes there's a tunneling that goes right to the other person. And when I was talking to James Hadlock about this, I go, James, this reminds me of when I was in 2nd grade. My mother's face just kind of went like this. It was like, he goes, you want to know the neuroscience behind that? I go, there's neuroscience behind this? He goes, when our brain, it's called polyvagal theory, when our brain, we're built for connection. Our brain will release something into our eye and we get this tunneling or we're right to the other person, the window of your soul. There was an NFL football player that when we were doing this, he almost started crying. And he said, Bob, there's too much sadness behind my eyes. And I said, you don't have to do this. And I never make anyone do it. If they want to stop, we stop. And he kept at it. And when we started, he was talking 200 miles an hour. About here, I said, are you thinking slower? Is your thinking slowed down?
Yes.
He said to me, dude, you're blowing my mind. And he completely calmed down. Is there emotion?
Sure.
Because I've opened up a place of vulnerability and you were brave enough to step right in. And you're actually very brave. You stepped right in and you were open. And some people can't do that. Now, this is the interesting thing that I accidentally learned. Did anybody out there feel something different, a connection, when you were watching this? Please raise your hand if you have. Just raise them, please. Okay. I did this with 400 eighth graders, and I didn't know it would work with 400 eighth graders. And I looked at them and I said, how many of you just felt something? And most of the kids' hands went up. I said, that's what human connection feels like. This is not human connection. The more we did this, the more I did this, the more I started to heal inside. And I watched everything change, not only with me, but with people that I met. Finally, this is trust. Trust releases oxytocin in our brain. That's our trust hormone. Oxytocin is a greater reward than the dopamine of addiction. So James said this to me. He goes, Bob, all of my addictions fell away. I did the 12 steps. I did everything. It has a very small rate of success. He goes, as I got more and more connected, he said, a funny thing happened. The addictions just went away. After he had battled his whole life, it wasn't a battle. It was going back to connection. So my addiction of busyness went away. Golf went away. Sugar went away. It was Thanksgiving dinner. They brought out the pies. I love pie. I love sugar. I love desserts. And I went, I don't eat dessert anymore. They fell away. It's a different thing, you guys. It's a falling away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a study, I don't know if any of you ever saw it, where they've got a rat in a cage, and the rat's sucking on heroin, getting more and more addicted, and they got food right there, and the rat ended up dying. Did anybody ever see that? There was a scientist that looked at that later and goes, well, dude, the rat is all by himself. So they jacked up a bunch of rats on morphine, got them all addicted, and then put them in a maze where they could all play with each other. Funny thing happened. None of them went back to the morphine. And there are actually countries that are testing that. Let's get these guys that are coming out of prison. You guys, I just spoke at the prison yesterday. And when I was speaking to the prison, I told these guys this. After I did this connection exercise, you know what James had me go do? Bob, pick somebody who you think is your superior. Some of you right now think that I might be your superior, somebody's your superior, because look what he's done. And then he says, Bob, I want you to go find somebody who you think is inferior. So I went to the president of New York Life of all of Hawaii, and I sat straight across him and I said, hey, I learned this thing about connection. Can I try something with you? And he was wide open. This guy's amazing. And then I went on the streets of Salt Lake and I sat down on the ground next to one of the homeless men, one that would talk to me. And I looked him right in the eye. And we had a conversation that went way longer than I thought it was ever going to go. I came back the next day. He says, Bob, what did you learn? I learned that there's nobody above me or below me. We're all the same. And it was at that moment I saw that divine spark, that love for every single person, and I saw it in myself for the first time. And I went, why didn't you just tell me? He said, you needed to see it for yourself. I want to talk about comparing. If we compare ourselves and conclude that we are less than somebody, we feel depleted and depressed, and then we want to withdraw, hide, get away from others so they won't see us as unlovable or incapable as we see ourselves. The human connectedness feels severed. We are alone and self-exiled. Does that sound right to anyone? Watch this. If we compare ourselves and conclude we are better than someone, we may feel superior, contemptuous, and dismissive. We may not want a connection with someone so beneath us. Again, the cord of human connectedness feels sliced, and we are once again alone in our superiority. Dad, this is my daughter Dolly. We like this new version of you. How would you have raised us differently? Dolly asked me that. And I said, sweetie, there would have been more car seat moments. And I told this car seat story for a long time, but I realized that I accidentally learned some of this long ago. This is the story. Dolly, by the way, when she was a little baby, I'm holding her in my arms. And when I brought her home, I felt a connection with this little girl. But when I was looking into her eyes, she was looking at me as if to say, I'm smarter than you are. You know that kind of a personality? Well, I'm driving down the freeway. She gets out of her car seat all by herself. I go, Dolly, get back in your car seat. I look in the rearview mirror. She's looking at me like, yeah, right. Well, I'm getting a little angry. I was kind of a parental pygmy sometimes. Get in your car seat or else. She's looking at me like, bring it on. So I pull over to the side of the freeway. I get out, and I got an idea in mind on how to solve this problem, right? That, boom, that answer, right? I'm bigger than she. And I stopped. And I stopped back then because somebody taught me something different about pausing and looking for answers. And this is how I did it then. I looked up and I said, she's your daughter. What do you want me to do with her? But I paused. And I don't know where you are, whether you want to call it your inner self, God, the Spirit. I paused, and this bubbled up right into my mind very clearly. Give her a hug. I'm not feeling like a hug. You got any more ideas? I'm in battle mode, right? And I paused again, like there was another idea that was going to come up. Instead, this comes up. If you're not going to listen, don't ask anymore. So I went to the other side of the car. I opened the door, and I go, this is nuts. I opened the door. She's ready for her fight, right? This is what we always do. We battled. Me and my daughter battled. And I went, Dolly, come give Daddy a hug. For the first time ever, she melted, she ran across, she jumped into my arms, she wrapped her arms around my neck, and she started sobbing uncontrollably. And I am sitting there lost, going, what is going on? When she was done crying, I said, are you ready to go home? She went, mm-hmm. And we didn't have another problem all the way home. Dolly called me and said, Dad, I figured out that car seat story. She goes, you've told it for years, but I finally figured out what was going on. I go, what was it, Dolly? Dad, when I was a little girl, every time I did something wrong, I was just trying to get your attention, and you rejected me and sent me to the corner. You rejected me and sent me to my room. By the way, Dad, when I was 6 years old, I just climbed out the window and played with Sarah for 2 hours, then came back in and went back on. Can I get out of my room now? She goes, Dad, you thought you controlled me? I mean, she had so much fun telling me that. She said, but Dad, I figured it out. When I was in that car and you put your arms out, that's what I wanted. I just wanted you to love me. And you gave it to me, and that's why I sobbed. And once again, you guys, the things you saw in the past, everything starts looking different when we start getting these insights. My son, Thomas, this was not more than a month ago. It's now part of my TEDx talk. I called him, hey, Thomas, I'm going to be a little late. He goes, for what? To move that table. Oh, was that today? And I went, well, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Dad, you never get mad anymore. I think I'm just going to make a goal to get you mad and angry again. He said, doesn't it matter? And I go, Thomas, it's not that it doesn't matter. I'm just okay either way. How would you like to be okay either way? Would that be kind of cool? I'm going to skip this part. I'm going to go to the movies of the mind, and then I'm going to finish out what the TEDx talk looks like. But this is a big piece, you guys, getting connected with reality. James taught me this. I found out Byron Katie, this kind of probably comes from a lot of her work. But I want you to answer this question for me. How many of you are thinking of something that's coming up in the future and it's causing you stress or anxiety? Be honest. Okay, when I do this in a school, how many hands do you think go up? Every one of them, without fail. And that's one of the reasons that right now in the schools, anxiety and depression is exploding. We could talk more about that on another day. And the schools don't know what to do about it. True? Yeah. Okay. Universities, too. In fact, it's called the mental crisis across the country. At every university, psychological counseling services are overwhelmed. So I asked the students, okay, how many of you are feeling stress or anxiety about something coming up? They all raised their hands. Last year, I was talking to a young lady from American Fork High School. And I said, so you feel stressed? She goes, oh, yeah, I'm freaking out over our soccer game on Saturday. I go, why? She goes, I'm afraid I'm going to fall down. I'm afraid the coach is going to yell at me. I'm afraid we're going to lose. I'm afraid we're not going to get to state. And I said, okay, can I ask you a question? Have you ever gone to the theater and it's a really scary movie and it's scaring you, right? And you remember this, just actors and actresses, it's not real, and you feel a little bit better? She goes, uh-huh. I said this, are you currently playing soccer on Saturday? Let me remind you it's Tuesday and we're sitting in your living room. And she goes, huh? Are you currently playing soccer on Saturday? She goes, well, no. Did you fall down on Saturday? No. Did the coach yell at you on Saturday? No. So would you agree with me that you are seeing a movie in your head and it's playing, you're the only one who can see it, and it's freaking you out? And by the way, is it real? Is it real or a fake movie? She goes, well, right now it's a fake movie. Is it fake or real? She goes, it's fake. It's not real. Great. Let me ask you a question. How would you feel if you played the movie again in your head? Go ahead, play it. I want you to see yourself lose the game, fall down, coach yells at you. How do you feel? She goes, I'm freaking out. I said, all of our emotions come from our thoughts. You're watching a movie and it's creating thoughts that are causing feelings. So here is probably the biggest question James asked me that helped change my life. Here it goes. What would you experience right now in this moment, sitting here with me, without that movie playing in your head? It's not even real. Wake up, be right here. And she looked at her dad and said, I could be happy. It's not real. It's not real. And she started smiling, and I'm going, you got this in 2 minutes, and it took me months. Kids get it so much quicker. The schools are writing me. We love that piece about movies of the mind. I said, listen, every time you're feeling and feels like tightness in your tummy or you can't breathe or it's in your neck or it's in your head and it's about an event that's coming up, it's coming from a thought and it's not real. She got it. So a little while later, this is cracking me up. She starts getting angry. I go, why are you mad? You know what my sister said to me 2 days ago? And then she stopped and she laughed. I said, why are you laughing? She goes, it's over. I'm watching a documentary. I'm watching something that's not real. It's a movie in my mind. It's not real. Holy cow. She's running around American Fork High School telling everybody, movies are real. They don't get it yet, but she gets it, and her anxiety has almost completely gone away. So I got connected with reality, and it made a big difference. You guys, anxiety and stress typically comes about thoughts of the future. Sadness is typically about junk or things we're thinking about that happened in the past. That's kind of what I found out. So I've got time, so I want to talk about beating yourself up. How many of you beat yourself up? You don't have to raise your hands. Beat yourself up over something that happened in the past and you can't seem to let it go. It just keeps bothering you. If I had just done this with my marriage, if I had just done this with my son, if I had just done this back in high school and it's bothering you. Well, this is an interesting question. Knowing what you know now, would you have done it exactly the same? Probably not, because you have more wisdom today. And the way I learned this was I was thinking about something that happened in my life. Like, let's take that young lady that I didn't do anything. I could beat myself up over my entire life over that. And then one day somebody says, well, Bob, knowing what you know now, would you have done something different? Absolutely. How can you judge that 18-year-old with the 54-year-old brain you have today? And by the way, judgment, I found, kills the connection maybe to our own spirit. I don't know how that works, but I know it puts a wall up between me and who I really am. And so, in fact, if you could just let that go, if you could just start to understand that and also heal it, that makes a big difference. There was a young man I was talking to. He was still beating himself up about almost hitting a kid when he was 18 years old because he was protecting his brother. He said, don't you ever dare, threaten my brother again. And he had his fist up. 10 years later, he's talking to kids, telling them the damage that bullying can do to another person. And when he was done, I said, have you forgiven yourself for almost hitting that kid? No, I think about it every day. Knowing what you know now, would you have done that then? He goes, well, no, absolutely not. How can you possibly judge the 18-year-old with the 28-year-old brain and person you are today? And I showed him something he didn't see before, and I said, by the way, I see something you don't see. He goes, what? You were heroic. You stood up for your little brother. Look at who you really are. You were a great dad. You did the best you could. My daughter said this to me. She goes, Dad, what's your biggest regret? I said, Dolly, you know my answer to that. She goes, yeah, Dad, I do. You don't regret anything because you couldn't possibly be who you are today and help the people that you can if you hadn't gone through all the hell that you went through in your life. You did the best you could. So that's what my daughters are learning, and I'm just going, wow. So I'm going to show you the ending. Well, I want to show you this first, and then I'm going to go to my ending. So you guys, this is what's interesting. Please all imagine that you're the diamond. Can everybody kind of see the diamond? And the diamond says who we really are. You already are perfect, happy, calm, and loving. That's you. You are this person already. But you know why you can't see who you really are? Because your mind is making too much noise. It's covered by a layer of horse crap. This is what we think is wrong with us, and we try to hide it from ourselves and others. Our shame, our guilt, our insecurity, our addictions, our self-loathing, our selfishness. Does this sound familiar to anyone? By the way, they're all just what? Thoughts, and they're not? Real. Oh, by the way, there's another layer, and you see this everywhere. Nail varnish, the masks we wear, like me, the great motivational speaker who's happy all the time. The masks we wear to be socially acceptable. People-pleasing, status symbols, conforming, self-help flattery. That's not your real self. And by the way, those are all just what? Thoughts, and they're not. So the amazing thing that happened, when my mind went quiet, I called James Hadlock and I said, hey, James, what did you do to me? He goes, what? I go, you know that chattering that goes on in your head? It went quiet. It's gone. It's so quiet in there. What did you do to me? What happened? He goes, Bob, I got you connected with others and connected with yourself, and that's our natural state. It quiets. And when it went quiet, all those thoughts of shame, guilt, doubt, fear, social status, all that stuff disappeared, and I saw who I was. And you can't love others till you love yourself. And all of a sudden, I didn't have to find a new girl to date for validation. I didn't have to get on stage for validation. I didn't have to hit a great golf shot for validation, and everything changed. And my kids saw it too. Okay, so let me just end the way the TEDx talk is going to look like, just a couple little parts, and then I do have one last thing, and then it'll be about 8 o'clock, and then we're going to have a great second part. It's the Myers-Briggs, right?
Briggs, and we'll have a little introduction before the break, too.
Okay, well, introductions, and there's going to be great dessert, I understand. Did you bring dessert? Were you supposed to bring dessert? I thought she was bringing dessert. Never mind, everyone out there, there's no dessert. I'm not addicted to it, so I don't care. There's been some miscommunication. I came today because I heard Krista was bringing dessert. Okay, so anyway, towards the end of my TED Talk, this is what I'm going to say. I got connected with my suppressed emotions. I got connected with others, got connected with myself, and I got connected to reality, and something interesting happened. The doctor who told me 7 years ago, Bob, you're going to die, I just got a physical from him. And he sat there looking at me when he was done, and he says, Bob, do you know how different you are? How calm you are? And by the way, my blood work was the best it ever was. My cholesterol was the lowest it ever was. I never need massages or anything anymore. He goes, do you know how different you are? I'm going to take you to lunch. I need to know what you know. I need to know what you learned, because I spent half my day with all these kids from the high school with depression, anxiety, and panic. It's exploding. I learned that I could go from panic to peace. Would you like to learn how to go from panic to peace? To learn how to be okay either way? And then something else really amazing happened when my brain went quiet. So at the end of the TED Talk, this is what I'm going to say. My psychiatrist 7 years ago, when I was in the darkest, deepest, ugliest place where I thought it was hell, where I didn't care if I lived another moment, let alone be in the universe anymore, he said, Bob, I know you're not going to believe me, but it's going to get better. I said, you're right. I don't believe you. And then one day, as my mind quieted, I walked outside and I go, look how beautiful it is out here. And all the colors turned on. And I could hear birds singing again. It's amazing what you can see when your mind's not making too much noise. And I literally saw heaven here on earth. So if anyone's struggling and you're in that dark and ugly place, I know you won't believe me, but I promise it will get better. So that'll be the end of the TED Talk. This is the end of our time together. I want to show you one last thing. Everybody squeeze like that. And hold it. Can you imagine how you would feel carrying this around with you all the time? And how the tension will just build up and hey, can you give me a massage at night because I'm holding? Now let go. Not knowing movies of the mind, let me tell you a little story about 25 years ago. I had this awesome business teaching college students all over the nation how to memorize. It was going awesome until my best friend from college, my best friend in life, broke into my home, took some things, destroyed my business. How many of you have been betrayed? It's horrifying, isn't it? But I had him dead to rights. I had evidence he had broken into my home, and I was going to nail him. I was going to get him. I was going to embarrass him, but I had a problem. You see all the rage? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't sleep. I was just, well, I have this little thing about if something's not going on in your life that you don't like, don't be the victim. Change it, leave it, or accept it. So I went to my older, wiser mentor and I said, I don't get it. He did this to me. Why am I suffering so much? And he says, Bob, let me ask you something. If you press charges and you nail and embarrass him, will that save your business? I go, well, no, the damage has already been done. So he said, so why are you pressing charges if it doesn't make a difference? I got really mad. You got to be kidding me. Somebody's got to teach him a lesson. Somebody's got to make it right. Does this sound familiar to anyone else, or was it just me? And he says, Bob, hold on. That's revenge. And revenge is taking poison and hoping the other person dies. He said, Bob, you don't have to listen to me. But if you will let this go, if you will take this off of your shoulders, I promise there's great things that you have ahead of you in your life, but you can't carry this with you. You got to let it go. I went 2 weeks. I could not let it go. And guys, I'm going to tell you the story exactly the way that it happened. And when I have more neutral religious groups, I tell it a different way, but I'm going to tell you exactly the way that it happened. I dropped to my knees and I said, I can't forgive him. I hate him. I hate him. And my understanding is I need to forgive others, but I can't do this by myself. C.S. Lewis said one of the greatest moments in a Christian's life is the moment that we learn we can't do it by ourselves. And I said, if you want me to forgive him, you're going to have to help me. Once again, if you enter wisdom, whatever, this is what came into my mind. What are you thinking about? Oh, I'm thinking about how he betrayed me, how he did this, how he did that. He goes, well, wait a second. Can't you think of something else? And all of a sudden, this is what came into my mind. Do you remember when you ran out of money in grad school? You had 2 months left to get your master's. You ran out of money, and he handed you $1,500 cash. And he said, congratulations, I'm giving you your graduation present early. I'm proud of you. Do you remember you guys had a thing where you would go to the mall on Christmas Eve just to enjoy the experience of the festivities, but you broke your foot that year? And he surprised you, showed up at the door with a wheelchair, just so you guys, and all the other things he had ever done for me in my life. And I watched all the hatred literally go away. And I actually thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe I called him up and I said, hey, I already dropped the charges. I gift you the business and I wish you the best of luck. He thought I was up to something. He says, what is it you really want? I said, you know what I really want? I just want my friend back. There are people that told me I was an idiot for doing that. I totally disagree, and I know why. I'm right. 2 years later, he was instantly killed in a car crash. When I got the news, bubbles up the thought, aren't you glad you let it go? And I wonder if this is why I've been blessed to be on all these stages all over the world, because I tell everybody this story. And I say, maybe that's the message you needed to hear today. Maybe you're holding a grudge against somebody in your family, or a spouse or a past spouse, or one of your kids, or the way life's turning out, or something that's an injustice, or you're mad at the government, or you're mad at God, or maybe you haven't forgiven yourself. My advice, my plea to you is let it go. I promise you there are good things to come. How many of you think that's a good idea? John Wooden, the great basketball coach at UCLA, said this. He said, I'm not what I should be. I'm not what I could be. I'm not what I'm going to be. But I thank God I'm not what I used to be. Be the student, find your teacher, make it happen. You guys and everyone listening, it's been an honor. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, you guys.